Hello and welcome. In a never-ending story of survival and resilience, nations in Africa have gone from dark times to promising moments, conceiving the future, raising hope and thriving against all odds. The continent's youthful population remain at the forefront of an ongoing digital revolution as critical thinkers, change makers and trailblazers, scaling through the hurdles of instability, inequality and wealth disparity. This is Africa This Week, and I'm your guide, Fadisha Lashutingwa. We start off the day with earlier in the week. Welcome aboard. Raila Odinga's call for Kenyans to stay at home and not report to work was largely ignored on Monday as thousands streamed to the capital days after the Electoral Commission announced election results which confirmed a win for incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta. On Sunday, Odinga called for a strike to support his claim to the presidency and accused the ruling party of spilling the blood of innocent people as he brushed off growing pressure to concede election defeat. Many Kenyans didn't agree with the National Super Alliance leaders' call for boycott and said they wanted life to move on. The Election Commission on Friday declared Kenyatta the winner of the presidential poll by 1.4 million votes.
I support NASA, but my part, all I did was I was supposed to vote, and the rest I leave it to the politicians, because if I was to boycott work today, those guys don't pay my bills. No. So nikiboycott nivutwa leo, jioni naenda kusema nini? Ama NASA maybe ikiingia in government I might get a job. It doesn't work that way. So mimi na advise wase wengine manze, kama uja get permission kutoka boss wake, enda tu job man.
And still earlier this week, it was in the news on Monday that at least 20 people were killed and 8 wounded in a provisional toll from an overnight attack the government says was a terrorist attack on a restaurant in the center of Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. The shooting began shortly after 9 p.m. local time on Sunday on Ouagadougou's busy Kwame Nkrumah Avenue.
Security forces launched a counter-attack about an hour after the shooting started. The gunfighting extended into the early hours of Monday. A Turkish restaurant, the Aziz Istanbul, popular with foreigners, appears to have been targeted because of the nature of its climb. Witnesses say the attackers arrived on motorcycles and began shooting randomly at customers seated outside the restaurant.
We had just finished eating and then we left the restaurant. We were waiting outside for the driver to come and pick us, and then we heard the shootings.
At the beginning, we thought it was a robbery, but then we realized it was more than that. Some were telling us they were robbed and then thrown out, and then we saw the incidents. It's worse than we thought. There are still people who are trapped inside with those bandits. We are waiting to see what will be the result of the assaults.
The attack is similar to one last January, when gunmen targeted the Splendid Hotel and the restaurant, only 200 meters from the latest attack. 30 people were killed in that incident. The Burkina-based government said it has contained this new attack and that forces were carrying out house-to-house searches for likely fleeing attackers. It is still unclear who carried out the attack, but there are fears that the latest attack is the work of one of the affiliated of Al-Qaeda, still active in the Sinai region.
And there was a state of grief in Sierra Leone as the death toll from the deadly mudslide left residents on the outskirts of Freetown scampering to find whatever remains of missing and dead relatives.
Most parts of Freetown are still reeling from the deadly mudslide which swept off homes in overnight rains. An estimated 600 people are reported to be missing as rescue workers put initial death toll at more than 300, many of them trapped under tons of mud as they slept.
Got a distress call this morning about a landslide at the site you see. We mobilized our volunteers and came, but it was like more of a recovery than rescue. Though there were people who were being rescued, though minimal. And those were given first aid, and with the help with the military, Red Cross, the Fire Force and others.
It's been anguish for families, and the large number of missing most certainly means more dead bodies will be found in the coming days. A pointer being bodies that have washed up on the beach and those still buried in their homes. For bodies that have been found, the sight has not been pleasant. Many bodies were in a horrible state, missing arms, heads, or legs.
We scatter within the area, we're able to rescue some people, then the late body, the way they were attack out in the land, we're able to take them, you don't understand? But when I care about the first batch of the late body, they went at the team, I get for go cry to the doctor, say, be full up with vehicles. So he give me some ambulances with some other health workers then. We come back.
A mortuary in central Freetown was overwhelmed on Tuesday, its facilities unable to cope with the numbers. The government's concern, apart from burying the dead now, is to put in place a quick plan to check an outbreak of cholera.
And days where students of Nigerian public universities sit at home instead of in classrooms found its way back on the news on Tuesday. The Union of Lecturers, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, kicked off a strike, and they say it is indefinite. ASU took the decision after a meeting last weekend, but only made it public on Monday, causing academic activities to stall in universities across the country.
What we are doing is to help the Nigerian university system in order to reposition Nigerian universities as centers of development. Nigerian universities should be the incubating centers for ideas that we need to invent, to create, and to train the right caliber of people that will drive the development of the country. Education is a catalyst to development. That is not disputable. We know that our students cannot actually expect the best from their staff, from their lecturers, unless the lecturers are in the right frame of mind, unless they have the enabling environment. Where government has failed to fulfill its promise on revitalization, we cannot have the correct facilities to train our students.
The Zambian opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema finally became a free man on Wednesday after the government dropped treason charges against him. It marked a climb down in a political crisis that erupted after disputed elections last year, with prosecutors saying they were unwilling to pursue the case against Hichilema, who had spent months in jail. He and 5 others were charged with treason in April after his convoy allegedly refused to pull over for President Edgar Lungu's motorcade. His detention deepened a political crisis in Zambia, with critics accusing Mr. Lungu of becoming increasingly autocratic. Search and rescue efforts continued on Wednesday in Sierra Leone as hundreds remain missing from the deadly mudslide. Authorities put the number of fatalities at 200 as at the time of filing this report, but as many as 600 people are still missing.
The flag is down because many people lost their life through the heavy rain and the kind of flooding that took place at Regent. So the government decided to mourn for these people that lost their life. So that's why the government decided to let the flag down.
The government also have to put on more effort in order to help the people in our country, because the trouble is, the destruction is too much. The government, has to put on more effort.
You're watching Africa This Week. We'll take a quick break and be back shortly. To stay with us. On Thursday, the United Nations announced that the number of South Sudanese refugees in Uganda has hit 1 million as hundreds of desperate families pour across the border every day seeking refuge from the war.
The conflict in South Sudan has created Africa's biggest refugee crisis since the 1994 Rwandan genocide. UN agencies are now raising a fraction of the cash they need to provide food and shelter. But the crowds keep flowing across rickety wooden bridges near the northwestern Ugandan border town of Busa, staggering under the weight of babies and a few pots or bundles of clothing balanced on their heads. Women and children make up more than 85% of the arrivals.
And refugees continue to arrive in their hundreds, and that may increase once the rainy season subsides. We continue to operate in a situation where we're chronically and severely underfunded. So far this year, the humanitarian response has received just 21% of the $674 million needed to provide all the needs to the South Sudanese refugees in Uganda in 2017.
In Uganda, South Sudanese refugees receive hot meals, vaccinations and plots of land. All can enter and they are free to travel and work in Uganda, policies that have drawn praise from aid groups. But refugee agency UNHCR says Uganda is struggling to provide food and shelter.
We're currently close to hosting 1 million South Sudanese refugees land in Uganda. We expect that milestone to be reached within the coming weeks. And it once again highlights the urgent need for countries around the world to support Uganda in hosting refugees, but also using the political influence they have to bring the South Sudanese leadership together in dialogue to end the bloodshed and to create the conditions that will allow these refugees to safely return home.
We face a lot of problems. As a pregnant mothers, we have no something to buy for us as well. And then, as you can see, children are crying here because of hunger. We are not getting a lot of anything to buy to our children this one. Food.
Donor nations have not given enough, with the UN agency receiving about 21% of the nearly $700 million needed for South Sudanese refugees in Uganda this year.
Uganda's continued to welcome refugees with open arms, but the sheer scale of the influxes receiving means that significant challenges are being faced in providing refugees with the assistance that they need. Food rations have been cut in half for many. There are not enough doctors and drugs in health clinics, and teachers are teaching under classrooms of more than 200 pupils.
As Uganda extends its hands of love to the displaced South Sudanese, it is expected that other countries will take up the responsibility of supporting these vulnerable ones in their quest for a better life.
And on Friday, the Rwandan President Paul Kagame was sworn in for a third term after winning the recent election with nearly 99% of the vote. Many African leaders were in attendance at the ceremony, which held in the capital, Kigali. The longtime president had described the August the 4th election as a formality while campaigning. The East African nation has virtually no political opposition, and critics have accused Kagame of being intolerant of dissent. Kagame has been de facto leader or president since the end of the 1994 genocide. Because of a change to the constitution in 2015, he can legally stay in power until 2034. And with that, we have come to the end of Earlier in the Week. Up next is Digging Deep. Welcome back to Africa This Week. Now, struggling with the side effects of a system that rarely works for society, Africa is often described as the least developed region in the world, where the gift of knowledge and the bliss of ignorance readily presents the good, the bad, and the uneducated. According to a latest world ranking, only 10 universities in Africa presently meet up with the global standards, out of which 5 are in South Africa, 4 in Egypt, 1 in Uganda, and none in Nigeria, where lecture halls and school gates were recently shut down across the country. Joining me in the studio to dig deep on Africa This Week is Taiwo Hassan, the National Coordinator, Education Rights Campaign. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, what are your thoughts on Nigeria's educational system and the continuous industrial strike that has remained a prevailing issue in the country?
Nigeria's education sector is virtually non-existent. Because when you say education, there are certain things that must be present. There must be the school structure. You must have the facilities for teaching. You must also have the well-trained and well-remunerated
But just
staff.
To make light of this, we do have school structures, don't we?
they do not exist in the right shape anymore. Any one of us who has gone back to his alma mater will most likely bring back tale of woe, because government continues to underfund. The schools that you can still call schools today were schools that were built, you know, in the first, second republic, but on the basis of the consistent underfunding by successive government, even those facilities have begun to crumble. In University of Lagos, about a year ago, there was an outcry of students that their hostels were infested with bed bugs. The same with OAU. Students are dying because the medical facilities, the medical centers, rather universities, are not even working. So, which is why I said, in terms of what education should be, it is virtually non-existent in Nigeria as of today.
All right, let's move very quickly now. And how relevant is industrial strike to the solutions of the educational sector, since the reasons for agitations keep reoccurring?
The strikes of the unions in the education sector are the reasons why we can still point to some existing universities, polytechnics, college of education today, that they are even still there. Otherwise, without those strikes, perhaps Nigerians will even have no schools to go anymore. Because government has clearly shown that it is not prepared, not willing to provide the adequate funds for the education sector. For instance, in 2013, ASU was able to compel the federal government, you know, to ensure that, to commit 1.3 trillion naira over the course of 6 years as revitalization funds for public universities. But despite even that, government has only been able to pay one tranche, you know, of that entire sum since 2013, which is the basis for the current indefinite and total strike action. So I say that strikes are the reasons why government is even doing the little it is being forced to do.
All right, but how can you describe the demands of the Academic Staff Union in respect of the government's financial strength?
What is government financial strength? Where did government find 6.1 billion to buy exotic cars for lawmakers? How much are they using, possibly several millions of dollars, to treat the president for the past 6 months in London? How much was voted for feeding Aso Rock? How much was voted, you know, for the salaries and luxuries of political office holders? The money is there. The only thing is that the government does not feel that money should be used to be invested in public education and public health facilities. So the idea that money is not there, we should forget it. What we need is a struggle to compel government to provide the money to invest in public education in order to safeguard the future of this country.
Well, what are your thoughts on suggestions that maybe learning institutions should become autonomous rather than depend on government funding?
This slogan of autonomy has been bastardized by the government. Autonomy does not mean that universities will not depend on government funding. Government, according to the Constitution, has a responsibility to use society's money, wealth, to fund education and social services. What autonomy means is that students and academic staff must have the democratic right to determine, you know, the future of their university, the focus, their research. But what we want to prevent is a situation whereby, and that's happened severally, where the dictatorial government will therefore use public universities for their own designs and their own agenda. We want universities, you know, to be protected from undue interference from Nigeria's corrupt political leaders, so that science and technology research can go on, I mean, without undue interference. That is what you mean by autonomy, so that government funding becomes important. If schools are going to generate fundings alternatively from grants and endowments, these are simply, I mean, supplementary. Government responsibility in terms of budgetary allocation remains fundamental, and we are not going to leave that.
Indeed, salient and very pertinent questions there. Taiwo Hassan, National Coordinator, Education Rights Campaign. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, home to some of the most promising nations of the world, the low standard of education in Africa remains a potential setback, requiring a paradigm shift, a policy upgrade, and the political will to commit more resources into closing the gap between demand and delivery. Knowing that no nation can grow beyond the level of her enlightenment, policymakers and key players in Nigeria must urgently rise to the occasion, address the issues and resolve the disputes, because education holds the key to national transformation. I have been your guide, Fadishala Shetingwa. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now.